Hello, and welcome to Lesson 2.8, Leveraging External Resources. During this lesson, we will discuss important considerations when using publicly available analytics. While they can vary in quality, a key benefit to open source analytics include that they are transparent and can be readily understood, validated, critiqued, extended, and more by the community at large. It is important to remember that not all analytics are created equally, and it's imperative to apply good critical thinking skills to ensure that any analytic you choose to adopt meets the standards and requirements of your target operational and analytic environment. The following list highlights some well-known analytic repositories and adversary emulation tools that can be used when conducting the type of research and analysis described in this module. These, along with other published resources, can be very useful and help save significant time in engineering detections for your hunt. Now let's take a look at an example analytic from the MITRE Cyber Analytics Repository, also known as CAR. Here we see the CAR analytic named Service Outlier Executables, which is mapped to a specific attack tactic, technique, and subtechnique that it is applicable to. While this example is mapped to a single attack technique, others can map to several techniques across the framework, with varying levels of applicability. CAR also provides an analytic coverage comparison matrix that lists the number of published analytics relevant to a certain attack technique, from sources such as Sigma, Elastic, Splunk, and even CAR itself. It is important to note that the total number of analytics does not provide any insight into how much coverage against the attack the analytics provide. And so it's necessary to evaluate any analytics you use to determine how easily they can be evaded and if they make sense or need to be modified for your specific needs. Continuing on with the scheduled task technique example from previous lessons, here we see an execution with SHTASK analytic published in CAR that may be useful to us. This analytic is intended to detect all invocations of shtask.exe. While this seems like it should have pretty high recall, we know that SHTASK is a native Windows program that is also used by benign system functions, and thus this analytic will not do well separating benign activity from malicious activity as is. Although varying in levels of completeness, the detection sections in attack are a useful starting point for understanding how one might detect a given technique. In this case, it provides data sources. Process creation, the data source that the CAR analytic is based around, is one of them, but attack calls out others that we could also consider. Attack also mentions native Windows configurations and log sources that can provide additional data. Bringing all of this information back, let's consider what we know about the execution with SHTASK analytic we were examining. We know that it uses process creation as a data source, and that there are other relevant data sources that we may want to cover with additional analytics. We also saw in the pseudocode that the analytic looks for a single binary name, which has the potential to be bypassed or evaded. Finally, we also noted that the analytic does not appear to meaningfully distinguish between benign and malicious activity as presented. Questions that we should consider addressing if we move forward with this analytic include: what results does it provide in my environment? What other open source analytics could complement this one? Is there any additional technique research we could or should do? And how much coverage do we need to successfully detect this activity in our environment? Is it worth investing more time and effort into modifying this analytic, or should we look for another analytic that could provide a higher return on investment? The answers to these questions will vary based on the organization, purpose of the hunt, and available resources.
Attack. This lesson has 3 objectives. I want to help you understand the prerequisites for attack mapping. What is it you need to have in your toolkit, and what needs to be true about the reporting itself for you to be likely to be able to map it to attack. I'm going to get a little bit into both the down and the upsides of mapping to attack. And finally, I'm going to go over the process that we're going to be using for the rest of this module for mapping to narrative reporting.
This concludes all of the lessons for Module 2. In summary, developing sound, solid hypotheses is fundamental to the threat hunting process and guides future data collection and analytic development efforts. Finding low-variance behaviors through open-source research and hands-on investigation can help in developing more robust analytics that cannot be easily evaded by an adversary. Refining hypotheses and developing abstract analytics can help set you up for success as you progress in the threat hunting methodology. And finally, using publicly available analytics is another option that could potentially save you time and effort in this process.